Awesome. We're set here. So hey, we're lucky enough. I'm all out of sorts. Today we're lucky enough to have we're super excited to have her on today. We have a couple of things in store for you. So honestly, we'll see how time goes. We'll do I know for sure we're going to start off with some color techniques today. And then if we have time, we're going to do a haircut. If not, I know we're going to bring Lexie back because we may have some more days in May to fill unfortunately for everybody. So we'll bring Lexie back for that haircut. So as we worked through that. And Lexie, take it away.
So today I brought home a few of my salon-centric mannequins. The ladies that worked there were nice enough to give me mannequins to color correct. So today we will be working with an imperfect canvas. I'm not sure if Willie's here, how this works. Again, I think we're good to go, so I'm just going to keep talking. I don't have my glasses on, so if you guys can't see, I think he'll be here to chime in.
Yep, so you're solid.
Perfect. All right, we're good to go. So this is the canvas that we started with. I went and lightened her this morning with 15 volume for 35 minutes. Her hair still feels great, especially for a mannequin. I don't know if she had permanent oxidative color on her before or if it was the semi-permanent. So I'm going to be utilizing the canvas. I'm not going to push this, lift her any higher. Trying to make sure you can kind of see the exact tones that are in there. We have a lot of warm tones. So my idea today was to color melt pink into orange and then do black tips for a little bit of that extra dimension and just something different and fun during this time, because for me, I like doing something different all the time and practicing things that I'm not super confident in. And what a better time than now when you're at home. So I'm going to be using all Pulp Riot color today, and to mix up I'm going to keep the formulas super, super simple, just so it's easy to jot down if you guys want to jot the formulas down, however you feel about it.
Hey, Lexie, while you're doing that, can you do me a favor? Because I think the whole beginning threw me off. So could you introduce yourself? Tell us where you are.
Do that. I think I was so caught up in just like the chaos of getting here, and I'm so excited to start. So my name is Lexie Sciortino. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I am a Pulp Riot artist and educator. I've traveled nationally doing hair shows and educating just with Pulp Riot color, fun stuff with that. Obviously, I'm not doing that now, so I'm here for all of you guys. And I've been doing hair for 12 years now. I actually went to Votech for my hair training, and that was my junior and senior year of high school. So I feel super happy and lucky to have learned that this was my passion through that time. One of the things that I love to share with people, I actually never knew that I wanted to be a hairdresser and never planned on it. It was one of those things when I joined the program, I learned how much I truly loved it, and that was just kind of it from there. Fell in love and decided this is what I wanted to do. So for my first formula, I'm going to be mixing up a neon pink and then a pretty pigmented dark pink. And that is just so I can make sure that I'm covering any of these underlying pigments up top. She has a few spotty pieces where she's got probably a level 7 band of red. Maybe, that sounds funny saying a level 7 band of red, but it's kind of a pinkish hue. Again, I'm only going to be doing half of my mannequin today. I'm going to be splitting her down the middle from where I lightened her out, and then I'm just going to be doing a simple 2-quadrant. If I was doing the whole head, this would be a 4-quadrant section. I find this to be the easiest way to learn and the easiest way to get a nice blended look with your colors. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below too, and they will be reciprocated to me. I'm all about answering questions. I want you guys to get the most out of this as you possibly can today.
Lexie, what's your Instagram handle, please?
I'm super original, and my Instagram handle is my name. So my Instagram handle is @Lexie Sciortino.
Thank you.
That's one of my signature things too, is throwing clips. So please don't mind that, guys. So again, I'm going to start at the nape, taking a very fine section. I think the small sections are super important just because you can see through them. Normally, I would go through and blend the root first, but because I'm using such a harsh color at the end, I kind of want to do this all in one fell swoop. And I'm going to be using our semi-permanent black. I'm not using a permanent black at the end, so that is how I'm able to mix such a dark color in with my other semi-permanent colors.
You had any issues with the black being more of a gray?
What was that question?
Someone asked that they've used the black in the past and had some issues with it coming out more of a dark gray. Any experience?
I will say I do work with exclusively only Pulp Riot colors. So when this gets a little brand specific, that's where I can't speak on that much. I can show you what I did yesterday and the color, and this is also posted on my Instagram so you can see it there. Our Noir is very blue based. So you can see where I started blending that up into the clear. It starts to turn blue, but that is a very true to tone black, as you can see there. So to me, this one does not come out gray. Maybe if I diluted it, but this mannequin was a level 10 before I did that too.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem. And then one of my favorite orange formulas to make, and it's going to sound a little bit weird and kind of contradicting, is adding a really strong orange with a little bit of a dusty purple. If you don't have purple, you could even add like, you know, some clear and a little bit of a darker purple into it. It will deepen your purple, and I can actually show you what this is going to create. It's going to give you that really pumpkin-y, like bright but depthy orange. So that's going to be the other mixture that I use for her mid-shaft. For anyone wondering, I'm using Nuclear and Nevermore. And that's about the amount of purple that I'm adding into my mixture. Not a whole lot, not too much, just enough to give it that punch that I want.
If they have a lot of hair, would a 9 block work better?
Possibly. I think this is the fastest way to go about it and the most efficient. There are so many ways to do this though, so I think that's one of those questions that if that works better for you, or if that's something that you've noticed works better or you want to try it, absolutely try it. I'm never one to say that one way necessarily works better than the other, if that makes sense. So I've started and I've rooted. You'll notice that I picked my section up and then I drop her back down, and then I'll take my hand and work my second color right up into the first one, and you'll notice I'm going side to side and really rolling that hair to ensure saturation. From there, I will drop this section. I always keep a towel handy while I'm working with colors too, because you do not want these to transfer too harshly. And then for the black, and this is where things get really tricky, and you really, really want to make sure that you are not getting this on your gloves. My personal favorite thing to do, normally I would have cut this mesh up prior, but I did not get around to it. I'm going to use mesh strips and lay this directly under the section that I've already done. And this is where, if you kind of stick that color onto the strip, it'll stick there too. You don't have to hold on to it. So you're going to take your black, start at the very end. And this goes for any color that you don't want to transfer into the color that's above it. You want to stay away at first. And again, I'm going to be really rolling that. When I'm using the mesh and not working it in with my hands, that's when I'm really going to focus on using a little bit more product and again, making sure I'm rolling it through there. And then once I get up to the black or up into the orange, I'll take and feather, but just a little bit. I don't worry too much about the blend with the black because with a look like this, you want it to be dramatic. I will go in with my finger where the pink meets the orange, slide it side to side just to ensure that that is a nice even blend.
Lexie, you're not worried about the color oxidizing by mixing it first with the length of the service?
No, so the cool thing about the semi-permanents that I'm using by Pulp Riot right now are they don't oxidize. So all of these are pure pigment suspended in conditioner, basically. I love them too because I told you guys I did a bleach out on this mannequin earlier, so she really needed love afterwards. These colors are actually going to leave her hair feeling better than when she started, and on top of that, they're not going to oxidize and they're not progressive. So what you see and what I'm applying is only going to shift due to the canvas, not due to the timing. So again, working that second placement, and now I'm kind of using my mesh as my guide, the same way that you would use a haircut for a guide. You can see where everything lays, you know where everything goes. Sometimes I'll get that one little piece that goes down into the black, I used to stress out about it so hard and think it would mess up my whole entire project. It does not. Do not stress about one little line of hair. One strand is not going to ruin the whole project, I promise. So again, we're going to very gently feather that up. And I will say, when you're working with black, semi-permanent black that is, and you go to feather it up, you want to make sure that the tip of your brush is saturated the entire time. You want it to have color on it. You don't want it to be all dried out. If you have it more dried out, that's when you'll see more of the underlying tone of whatever semi-permanent black that you're choosing to use. For instance, blue. On the mannequin I showed you earlier, she had that little bit of blue where those colors met, and you could kind of see that transition. And I wanted to showcase that just to show what it looked like when you kind of work it in too much and when you're not using enough pigment in one place. So again, we're going to take this next thin section, and I want to be able to see everything I'm doing through these sections too. Once I start getting further up into the head, you'll see me take my brush and work in an upward movement, and I'll still go back down, but that's just to make sure that I'm not dragging the end color up too high. I also start with the end color to be very dramatic towards the bottom and work its way to have less towards the top, just so you have that high impact, but that black's not too much for your clients. People have asked me before if the fake black looks like this are wearable for clients. They totally are. This one, for instance, will bleach out to be a hot pink, which sounds like kind of a nightmare, right? But when you think about it, and think about the mannequin that I bleached out here, for instance, she didn't bleach out a perfect blonde. I don't have a perfect canvas. So even with this, and I always personally love to go for black on the ends because you're going to cut that off of your client's hair anyway. So if that bleaches out hot pink, you can work with it until you work with cutting it out. And I always love to think of how you are not cutting the color, but coloring the cut and things like that too. I think that's where that comes into play as well. Do we have any questions so far?
Yeah, so with this particular, so this is the semi-permanent, what's the processing time?
The processing time for these is 35 minutes. I like to go 45 minutes when I am using the black though, just because I really want to make sure that that has fully encapsulated. Over time, these colors will start to kind of harden up and encapsulate. So when you go to rinse them, the colors are not going to bleed. You're going to see way less in there. When I rinsed out Noir last night, it rinsed out to be barely just a little bit of the blue that we know exists in it. That's all. I'm also choosing to put my darkest color at the bottom just because I don't want that black to bleed into everything. Had I put this on the root, you know, that pink would be purple, the orange would look muddy, and it would be different. So you want to make sure that you're strategically placing these colors when you do this too. And I personally like smaller brushes for doing this. It might take a little bit more time, but you can get a lot more detail with the blend in there. You can kind of just feather it in with the end of your brush rather than putting more work into it. Can everyone see everything okay? Do you guys want me to move around at all?
Looking good so far. I'll let you know their feedback.
Perfect. And then you want to make sure to, I just drug that orange down into the black. You want to make sure that your brush stays nice and clean. And if you see any color that you don't want and that doesn't belong on there, just make sure that you wipe it off on your towel before you keep going. The last thing you want is to be tracking different colors into different sections throughout the head. One of the biggest parts of these color melts is just consistency with it. And again, if this was a client, I probably would have started and rooted her from the crown and just kept going over and just done the root color. But I want to be able to blend these as I go just because there's such different colors today.
When you rinse, are you going to be using cool or warm water?
I am that stylist, and I'm even that stylist to my mannequins. They go in freezing water. Like as cold as my hands can possibly take is what I like to rinse with. And a good way to explain that to clients is explaining that they're kind of rinsing their money down the drain. That the moment that they ask for hotter water or complain about not using cool water or cold water even, that's when they're kind of wasting their however many hundreds of dollars that they spent on this color. And you know, they want it to last too. So I think it's really important to rinse with cool water every time. Again, I personally choose to do the coldest of cold water I can get, especially the darker the tones. So I'm going to be starting on a new mesh section just because we're working a little bit up the head. Once I get right about, I switch it up a little bit. So I'm going to anchor this in with the black being my first section. And again, you'll see me consistently rolling this side to side just to make sure that it's saturated. Something, and again, this is strict to Pulp Riot. When you work in the color too much, I will give you an example with my gloves in just a second because this is the biggest questions I see asked. If you work the color in too much, it will start to look like actual conditioner. And when you do that, because again, on a client, you would typically be melting this in with your hands. You don't want to see that. If you see that, put more pigment on that. I know a lot of other lines do that as well. So again, the second you start to see that conditioner start to emulsify out, you're losing pigment and you just want to go back in it and make sure that you add more so that you're saturated entirely.
Good stuff. When you do a color like the black on the ends, do you take into account the fact that that's going to be cut out relatively quick, or it's going to be cut out, so you may experiment a little more with those colors?
Absolutely. So that was actually the first way that I talked myself into putting black on one of my clients' ends because I didn't want to remove it. I didn't want the task of doing that. You know, to me, when I looked at the photo, one of my clients had showed me of something like this, I was like, well, that's going to be so impossible to remove. What do I do with that? So I thought it was a beautiful thing that with these and with doing it on the ends, you know your clients need their haircut and it's almost a push to get their haircut too. And they remember that that part of their hair needed to go anyway. You know, we colored the length that I kind of highlight the length that I would like to get rid of ideally on a client. We all have clients that don't want to cut their hair ever, right? So I kind of pick my section based off of that too and how much length that I think they should be losing. And I'm not one of those people that calls the shots either. It's where they need that healthy cut normally. And it's been a really fun way to get them to see where they need to cut their hair too.
When you're placing the mesh on, you're just gently placing it down.
Yep. And then, like I said earlier, the second that you touch color onto these mesh, they're locked in place. So those aren't going anywhere. They're really easy to move around and work with. I kind of just pick up new mesh every time that I want to add a little bit, maybe more orange in my section and more pink or more black. And by switching up the sections like that, that's going to give this a little bit more movement and dimension throughout the hair.
Do you find that most people who do vivids are used to getting a cool rinse? Do you make that part of your consultation?
Absolutely. So one of the first questions that I ask my clients when they come in for a consultation for any fashion colors like this, I ask them what their routine is at home right then, just so I can kind of feel out if they're willing to do it too, because I think some people think that they're willing to do it, but they really know that they love their regimen and they don't really want to. So I absolutely make sure that it's a known fact that that's a thing and that, you know, your hair will fade without a doubt no matter what you do if you're using that hot water. I think that aftercare is one of the most important things to do. Again, I normally lead with that in my consultation because I feel it's so important. I also talk to all of my fashion color clients about getting regular haircuts and keeping up with that because the importance of that, we have bleached these clients to be able to do these colors on their hair, right? It's super important to keep up with the health of that as well. Like that just is something that they can't go without. I fight a couple of my clients on it, but again, it's just not, it's not worth having a good hair color, but unhealthy hair.
Have you had any experience where when you first started working with Pulp Riot, you've had saturation issues and you feel like you've used more than enough color or more color than what you needed, but you still come out spotty?
300%. And was this, I have to ask, is this a question from you or in the comments?
From the crowd, yeah, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so again, I'm going to kind of give you this demo. So when you're working that color into the hair, right, and you're moving that around on your gloves because you've got hair in between your hands, this is my favorite way to show people this too. The more that you start to rub your hands in together, you can already see that that's lost some of its pigment compared to how dark we started with, right? So as you're doing this, what you're doing is you're emulsifying that color out and leaving it so the conditioner is showing. So when you see this on your gloves, this is my best reference point to tell you to add more pigment. Kind of stop what you're doing there. If you feel like it's spotty, add more and go in smaller sections. I do feel like I have had that problem at first because the consistency of the color line I worked with prior was totally different. The saturation and the way that it worked was totally different. So it was a little bit of a curveball for me, but the second that I realized that it was just me moving it too much, that really helped me.
I did education for about 5 years with an Australian company called Evo, and they did a semi-permanent. And one of the biggest challenges for me in the beginning was when I put my hands in hair, especially with permanent color, I tend to overwork it. So that shows up immediately when you're working with something like this.
Absolutely. And again, it was not something I was used to before that. So I feel for everyone that's still getting used to it. I encourage you, even if you see those little spots, most of your clients are understanding, especially when you're trying something that's new to you, especially when you're excited about it. I had a little ups and downs. I had a couple problems with smoke, for instance, with Pulp Riot when it first came out because I did not understand the underlying pigments and how that worked. My clients knew I was so excited and I had so much faith in the products that I was using that they were willing to let me go back into it and fix it. You know, I would just offer to fix it for free. I didn't want to feel discouraged. I want their hair to be perfect. So that's something I always encourage to offer that too. So I just put oh my goodness, Stutter City, another mesh section here, which is going to be my third one. This one I'm going to be doing the most of my pink out of anything. And again, even moving side to side, sometimes, especially when I'm doing rainbows, I notice that I start to see that white and you just want to go right on top and just put more color on there. And again, that's all you need to get that extra pigment in there. And once
Would you ever,
what was that?
would you use foils in place of the mesh, or do you prefer mesh?
I prefer mesh because I think it's easier to hold on to and it's just such a lightweight piece that I don't know, I prefer it. I've tried the color film too. Something one of the perks of the mesh too is you can see through it. So if you're ever in doubt that you missed like one little spot there or that black isn't all black, you can kind of peek underneath and check it out too. Color Track has a color control film too that's like literally a clear film that locks onto the hair pretty well, and that one's really good too if you're worried about the saturation or spots. Something else I like absolutely adore about Pulp Riot is that I got a couple black spots right there, and because she's properly saturated, I can wipe that right off and it's no longer there. That's where a lot of people too ask questions when you're doing more than one color and overlaying colors. Say I was doing a panel of pink and then a panel of orange and then a panel of black. The only color that I would feel like I needed to separate would be that black color right there. I would not feel the need to separate the pink and the orange because as long as, again, they're saturated properly, that excess color will skim right off of the outside layer of that.
You're getting great feedback, just so you know. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and also thanks for being patient with the whole start of this. I really appreciate it. I still think it was Zoom. I don't think it was us. And I will be sharing this online. I think if I really love this, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, or I might try to reverse it and do it a little bit different, maybe even with permanent color. Maybe I'll save that for the next something we put together, though. You guys,
Yeah, that'd be great. This particular video will go up on our YouTube and on our Instagram TV. So it will be on both of those as well.
Sweet. And I always encourage too when I do these lives, I've never done a Zoom necessarily before, but if anyone has any requests for anything that you want to see during this time, I have nothing but time to kill, and I would love to give you guys the education that you want to see. I'm doing hair, so I'm happy either way. So now that we're at my last few sections at the top, I'm going to go back and do one more mesh strip, and you guys can see how I just kind of gently set that there. And it's super easy to work around.
Can we play what if?
Yeah, of course.
What if you wanted the black at the root? How would you approach it in that sense?
So if I wanted the black at the root, we're going to recap to where I went back and I said that I didn't want to go through with my pink root first because I didn't want it to dry out and make it harder to blend. With the black, I would actually go in with the black root and root my whole section of my mannequin, or even the whole head if I was doing the whole head, wait for that to kind of encapsulate, and then go back and add my colors. So kind of go back in, just like if you were doing, say, a gray root touch-up, and then you went in and did the pull-through after. That's kind of the way that I would approach doing that black root, just so it had time to dry out and I didn't have the concern of the bleeding. The bleeding or mixing together of the colors.
I don't want to speak for you, but most of the permanent color I've worked with, you know, if it's on more than what the suggested processing time is, it doesn't get any darker or deeper. It doesn't affect it. So that's why you can go on and put the black in first and let it dry and then continue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, none of these are progressive, so I'm not worried about how long they're there just because these are semi-permanent. Luckily, I do work with the permanent color I work with isn't progressive, so I can do this even with those because I've done some kind of out of the box stuff. In case you guys haven't been able to tell, that's kind of my thing, is out of the box and doing weird stuff that makes you kind of question how. I have a cat in here and I hope he does not jump up there. We might have a special guest.
Well, my daughter hasn't came in yet, so don't worry about it, but it's all good. So we had someone ask about mesh over foils. I feel like for me with mesh, I get a little more grip and I'm not folding them. I can just place the hair on them. But again, I don't want to speak for you. So a student at a school asking about mesh versus foils.
Okay, so to me, I normally work with a medium weight foil. I do love foil. I use foil almost every day behind the chair still. I normally reach for mesh when I'm using creative colors specifically or going for a balayage where I don't necessarily need the incubation from the foil. So anything that I'm not necessarily relying on the heat, again, like Willie said, it's a lot easier to kind of work with. It's very lightweight. I think the difference would just be the foil is going to be a lot more work for you. When I first started doing all of this, I was using foil for everything, and just because of the way that it bends, it's a little flimsy. It's a lot harder to just paint directly on like this, and it's going to take you a lot longer to get the same results. And again, that goes for using semi-permanent color and something that does not need heat. I do not have my glasses on either, so how are we doing on time?
Oh, we're solid. We're like, even with the big mess up at the beginning, we're only about 35 minutes in, so we're good.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I want to make sure we finish this out because as you go up the head, you were talking about you're going to actually start changing the positioning of the black. So I don't want to sell that short and just move on, you know?
We are almost there too. So again, once I start getting like, right now she's got smaller pieces of black encased in between larger pieces of black. And again, that's going to give that kind of lived in movement without having actual movement. This will be my final piece of mesh that I am applying. And from here, we are going to do a dramatic difference in the amount of black that's here. We are going to go for a decent amount, just so again, it's that high impact look.
That's a great angle. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, please don't do that. My lovely sweet cat who I love so much. So I'm going to choose to start with the black after I do the pink first, so then I can kind of have a clear-cut area of where that orange is going to be. So I'm going to go for quite a large amount of that black. And I like to work downwards with the black rather than upwards. I'll feather at the end just a little bit, but I think when you work downwards with the black, you just get more of that clear black, none of the blue, nothing funky in between. And then I will go in the middle of that section where there's no color touching it, work up towards the pink first because those are super similar colors. And again, guys, I'm using a whole lot of pigment on my brush when I do this just because I want to make sure that it's going through and I'm not using my fingers for this one. And I got black on the brush, so I'm just going to take that, wipe it off. Don't let that slow you down or freak you out. Just keep going. So you can see how much of a dramatically big difference that end piece of black is versus these short ones that are only about that big. So we're going about a ½ inch bigger on these sections. And this is only going to be the final 2 sections of the top of her head that are that dramatic. That and then towards the nape. To me, again, that gives it the biggest high impact and dramatic effect with movement, and something that you can make sure that you see throughout the hair too. It's not lost in translation through the hair. You can see what you did very clearly still. Something I like to do in the last section too is I'll actually take and kind of comb down. This is going to look weird. And that's just to make sure that there are no spots on that top section. That's the absolute last place that anyone wants spots. We don't want them anyway, but we surely don't want them on the section that's exposed every day on her hair. Assuming this is a person and that she has a part, you know? Okay, so that's a wrap for that section. And again, you can see we have a dramatically large amount of that black down there. Do we have time to get through this little bit of the front, or do we want to stop here?
No, definitely. Finish the color for today. We'll see how that technique goes through the sides. And then I think we'll bring you back for the haircut.
Perfect. So for her, I envisioned her having a little bit of like a money piece, but I want it to be black. So I'm going to do a very thin section around her face, which we all know the mannequin hairlines are a little tricky. So I've got to kind of follow where her specific hairline is. Can you all see that section?
Turn her a little bit away from you, a tiny bit. There, perfect. Perfect.
Okay. That's all that I want for that black section for the money piece. And whoop. Guys, I have a very cheap mannequin stand. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go for this first just so I can get that out of my way. Back to the handy dandy mesh. I'm actually going to start at her root towards the front. And you want to start on the underside that's not touching the other sections before you go to the other side. Because when you tilt that down, see that transfer just a little bit. I always take a smaller section than I anticipate just in case it gets onto my other section, so I'm not super discouraged. You know, I don't just want to quit everything I'm doing, because I think we all know that feeling when you're super into the idea that you have and it doesn't quite translate properly. So again, I always leave that little bit of wiggle room there. This mannequin hairline is giving me a run for my money to anchoring the mesh. All right. So I'm using a lot of that black as I go through here, taking it side to side. I'll always check the bottom of these mesh pieces when I'm not using my gloves. I'm also choosing not to use my gloves to push this into the cuticle because I still have to touch the rest of my colors and I don't want that to be a whole mess there. And to me, that would just be a struggle. So I'm going to take that one little section that I dipped into there, bring that down, and call that a day. So again, if that transfers or you're trying to do something really bold around the face, just start with a smaller section because stuff happens sometimes. And again, you don't want to beat yourself up about it. Okay, so that will be her semi-permanent black money piece. And I'm going to take that and make sure that that is nice and sectioned off from the rest of what I'm doing. Also going to wipe my gloves off just in case. So from here, because I left such a small section up front, this should be pretty quick and pretty easy. So we're going right above her ear. I'm going to take that pink, and again, very close to that black over there, just keeping caution. I always like to pull it diagonally, but back 300% there, just to make sure that you're not anywhere near the front piece. I do this when I'm even toning my blonde. This goes for a lot that I do with anything that's very front facing like that. I keep using the term money piece. If you're unfamiliar with a money piece, that's going to be that bright, bold, kind of block color almost right around your face. It's not supposed to be a super thick block color, just a little bit of something to accentuate the look. And in the front, I'm going to be doing diagonal back sections for all of the parting on this one, because again, I think in the front, if you don't take those diagonal sections, your color will start to lay very, very flat and you're losing all of the potential movement that you had there. So on this particular section, I will probably only be using 2 mesh pieces here because again, there's not too much hair in my section. I left a very small final section here. So after this one is where I'll be adding my next piece of mesh.
What's the best analogy you could use for when you know you have enough color on the hair? We used to talk about how it looked like something, and I'm just going blank.
To me, this almost has like, once it's fully saturated, because if it's not fully saturated, it kind of starts to look a little bit dried out, like it's not a wet looking color. And that's not that's not the word that I would love to use to explain this, but like off of the tip of my tongue here, I would say that it looks nice and wet and consistently like she just showered, but in hair color almost. That's not necessarily an analogy, but I think that's the best I've got. So right here, again, my last anchored piece of mesh, and I'm going to bring the black up a little bit more. And again, I know I'll say things about how I do certain sections, but honestly, I'm one of those stylists that kind of does what feels right too in certain sections. Like I think the last time that I brought the black up, I started with the black, but you know, those things aren't super important. When you find what works for you or just find your system, stick with that. Do what works for you. think I'm happy with exactly where that is. So this will be our final placement for the top sections. This is the first semi-permanent hair color I've done in a month now.
Thank you.
I'm pretty excited about it. Like, after I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is going to be fun to rinse. And normally I don't really like rinsing out these colors. To me, because when I rinse them out in such cold water, it feels like it takes a little bit longer, but I also think I'm just anxious to see the final result always, and I just get impatient with it.
100%. We have a few people asking about yellows and getting yellows out of the hair. I don't want to speak out of turn, but if a toner or anything like that, if the hair's still yellow, is a temporary solution. If you want to get rid of yellow, you have to lift past yellow if you want it gone.
I totally agree with that. And again, you can obviously mask the yellow with toner. You can do things to alter the tonality of that. But none, as we all know, the toner is not permanent, okay? So just because you remove that yellow that day does not mean it's going to stay like that. That toner will fade off, and like Willie said, the level underneath is going to be the level underneath. So you have to lift past that yellow, which is almost impossible, guys. So don't stress yourself out trying to do that. I would suggest having your clients come in more often for those toner appointments.
And I think knowing that too and doing vivids is so important, right? Because rose gold a few years ago was huge, especially in hair color. And I would get, I would get questions in the salon all the time of, why didn't this formula work? And then, we're telling people to apply it to essentially a level 9 or higher where it's, pale yellow, and they're applying it to a level 8 where it's like an orange yellow. And that affects the outcome, especially in pastel colors, rose golds, things of that nature.
Absolutely. I even, I planned on coming on here and doing pastels today, but we all saw my canvas. She was not meant for pastels. So, we kind of switched it up like that. I think what you just said is super important. Super, super important.
90% of the time I failed with color early on, and even still today, let's be honest, it's because I get impatient and I don't lift to the level I should be, or I don't let it process as long as I should.
Mm-hmm. I have my toner rule for my personal self and the products that I'm using is the second I think it's done, I set a timer for 5 more minutes and I don't look at it. I just walk away slowly, and that's always how I get the perfect tone. Because to me, it's that second that I think it's overtoned, it's actually doing the perfect thing right there. Okay, friends, so she is all finished. I will take her off of the stand and kind of show you what we've got going on here. That's her back section. And you can see how all of the black is kind of at a similar area here at the top. And then she's got that nice black money piece for later that should give some massive dimension to this color.
Looks great. Can you do me a favor? When you dry it, could you just shoot? Wow. Could you just send me a couple of pictures, please, so we could post it with the video for the after?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I can do that.
Yep.
No problem.
Somebody, I'm just going through questions now because there's a lot of stuff in here. Is this kind of color wheel related or color related?
Right. Yeah.
I know I know not everyone is a new hairstylist, but there are a lot of students on here just because that's what we're doing as well. And I think a lot of times when I made mistakes in the beginning, and again, even today, it's because, I don't think back to the color wheel of what cancels out what, right? And I have a little bit of yellow left in the hair, but I want to do this awesome pastel purple, and then it doesn't work, right? Or it's really spotty.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to understand those underlying tones at each level because they will affect the outcome of the color.
I actually, as funny as this is going to sound, still 10 years into my career, look at the color wheel every single day that I do hair. I know it by heart, but sometimes, and even to show clients why they can't have certain colors with certain levels, showing them the color wheel makes so much more sense. or even, why you would cancel. Why are we putting this purple toner over my yellow hair today?
Yeah. I don't want my hair to be purple. I don't want my hair to be purple.
And to me, the color wheel has simplified that whole conversation. I used to be scared to show them the color wheel. And then I realized if I just showed them that one tidbit of information, just that wheel and how those colors worked and how they're across from one another, that was going to make them understand why we're doing what, and honestly get them more excited for their next hair appointments as well.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about when you're doing color blending like this, especially when you're using a color like black. The more you do it, I'm sure the more the nerves go away about the black bleeding into the orange and causing any discoloration. Talk to us a little bit about that with your experience of those nerves and how you kind of work through that.
So the nerves are something I kind of tell people sometimes it never goes away. I was a little nervous as I was doing this actually today, even though I've been playing with black for like 3 days. It's one of those things you just kind of have to push past it and know that you have a really solid idea and you want to bring it to life. Most of the time, the clients or the mannequins that are going to let you do this are going to be understanding and they're going to love it regardless. So I think it's one of those things that you have to just learn not to be too critical on yourself. And I know that's hard too, because we all want to look at work and look at the things we can do better, but I don't think you can be better without trying. So I think that's really important. Also, when I'm in the studio and I have a day planned for something like this, for instance, what I normally try to do is have my assistant come in that day knowing that she can hold out these ends. So what I do is we will actually have my assistant, or again, I'm a suite renter also. If I have one of my girls down the hall and I'm like, hey, I really need help, like, can you help me out with this? If you have someone hold this black up out of the way as you go to rinse your top colors, that's going to save you so much time, make it so much easier for you, and you really don't have to stress about the bleeding there. So another answer for that one is having help and friends around, having someone that truly wants to be there, whether it's a student, whether it's one of your friends that's just as interested, but you happen to have the model. It's a learning experience for everyone. So I think it's a really cool way to do that.
I think one of the biggest things too, that I guess if I could say, if I could go back to school and do over again, or I practiced very little in the beginning of my career on mannequins, practicing techniques that I wanted to use. So I think one of the biggest things that anyone can do is, if you're going to try something for the very first time, out and practice these techniques at home. So, the nerves, I can't tell you how many times I went into a haircut being nervous, but because I practiced before, I was nervous at a 6 instead of at a 10.
Right.
Practice, practice, practice.
And I encourage everyone that's scared of any of the dark colors and things like that, get yourself an extension weft. These are super inexpensive and you can find these at your local supply stores even, or on Amazon. Also, these little swatches. Doing this, you can test how they fade. You can shampoo them multiple times. You can also try to remove them off of either one of these. If you're curious and you don't want to just throw it in your client's hair and you want to know, okay, what is that black going to remove to? Go ahead and throw it on one of these wefts. Do something like this. Or for instance, if you want to do a black root and see how it fades into the rest of the hair, I encourage everyone, go get some cheap wefts and just practice on those. This has been so helpful, and this has been probably the most spent time that I've been doing since I've been home, is just working on wefts and trying out new things that I simply didn't know if I could do before. So this will give you a lot of extra confidence too. And I know they can't talk back to you, but again, super, super helpful. And affordable, even in school. And I will touch on what Lily said too. I didn't practice that much in school. I didn't really try the new techniques. I was too scared. So don't let that fear intimidate you.
And that's what fear is, honestly. I mean, now we're kind of done with color and now we're just kind of bantering, to be honest with everybody. So if everyone starts leaving, cool. Thank you for joining us. But I mean, I feel bad because I'm DJ Muldoon, knowledge destroys fear, and we've all heard it before then, but it's so true, even in today's circumstances, right? What's going on outside in the world today, the more knowledge I have that's true, factual knowledge, the less fear can control me, right? And for me, a big fear back in the day, and even still today, are stacked bobs. They're just not my thing, right? But I tell you what, it seemed like every day that I was scared of doing a stacked bob, guess what I got? Somebody on my book that wanted a stacked bob. And eventually I just had to work through that against my own will at times, but the practice, that is so essential, because when I'm in a salon, I want to be able to do everything. I don't want a new guest to call up and be like, oh, I want to come in for a bob, and who's the best. And I don't want to do everything.
And I will say, I differ from you a little bit. I put my focus a lot in one thing. I can't do a bob. Fun fact about me.
So start again. Wait, you froze. So start again, please.
I said fun fact about me, and something that I differ a little bit, but I always encourage people to be different than me. I closed myself off so quick after school, and I didn't learn bobs, and I didn't learn any of these things because I wasn't in environments that allowed me to have people to learn from. And this is kind of before independent education was a thing. So I didn't have all of the artists that I have now and look up to, and all of these types of opportunities to learn from. So that was a little bit more tricky for me. So I actually don't do precision haircutting. It's something that, again, I never got the help I needed. I still, to this day, now that I'm this far into my career, I want to take classes for it. I want to learn now. It's never too late to learn with that either. Yeah, again, you just kind of gave me that kick in the butt to get it together and take more classes after this and do it, because it is something. No one taught me how to tone hair. That was the one. I said, I want to do hair color, and I know how to do this. I'm going to figure it out. And I had 3 friends, and they let me do whatever I wanted on their hair. I toned their hair horribly. I toned it beautifully, and everything in between. All sorts of different colors came out of the toners that I tried. Did I learn how to tone icy blonde? 300%. And I learned, that way. And again, I think it's just really important to stay on your toes and keep learning things like that.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I want to make sure. I'm not saying I want, like, I know how to do everything, right? I have things that I love doing, and that's what I stick to now. But there aren't things. There are a few things that if they're on, there are a few things anymore that it's like, oh no, another a bob, right, or whatever. The great thing about, again, where we are today, educate top of my head right now that are producing free content every single day, that if you took a one-on-one class from them, it would be hundreds of dollars, or a hands-on class, or if you subscribe to their video collection, it might cost you $20 a month or whatever. Right. There's plenty of education, like you said, out there. Now it's literally at our fingertips.
Mm-hmm. Even being stuck at home, it's still there for us. Like, I normally teach at least one event in person a month, but that's where I'm like, why not do these things? I still love, and it's not about the money. It's not about any of that. It's purely about sharing the education that I never had too. I love giving that back.
And that's what makes people like you amazing. And that's why we love having people like you on, because you get, this isn't about, you work for Pulp Riot, and you said Pulp Riot a few times today. And obviously I'm with Sharkfin Shears, and we are Sharkfin Shears. Our whole goal in putting this together was to just have phenomenal education, to let it be about the technique, to let it be about body position, elevation, or if it's color, understanding the color wheel, whatever. It's not about Sharkfin, or Pulp Riot. It's about the education behind it, because honestly, there are several good shear companies out there. There are several good color companies out there. But if I don't know how to use the product or the technique, then it doesn't matter how good the color is or how good the tool is.
Absolutely. You've got that right. That is for sure. All right, Willie, do we have any other questions? I don't want to stay on here, even though people said they liked what we're talking about. I've seen a couple comments with that, and thank you all for everyone that's engaging with that. But
Rachel loves your lipstick. What do you have on?
It is Weirdo by Jeffree Star, and I really hope that doesn't start controversy, because I buy makeup because I like makeup. I'm just here to say that. No opinions.
No controversy stirred, so there you are. So I don't see any more questions. I've gotten myself into enough trouble today. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll get with you and we'll have you back on to do a haircut or maybe some more color. Who knows? But I'll be in touch.
Amazing. And thank you everyone that tuned in today. I hope everyone's staying sane and doing well. Stay healthy, everyone.
Be safe. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.